whatever thing that might happen in the outside world that upsets you, your ability to stay in your own energy, regardless of what's happening outside, is your absolute superpower.
There is actually a choice that you can actually change how you think about your life and how you think about yourself and just feel better. Just the whole high achiever thing, right? Just on every facet, you just want to be somehow perfect. And it's just exhausting.
Wanting to be perfect, it sounds like it could be coming from positive energy, doesn't it? But the reason that wanting to be perfect is so exhausting is because what's actually behind that is being terrified to not be perfect. And that's why it's such a energy drain for us.
Even more simple than that, is it coming from not enough or enough? Ultimately, everything that I have a negative self-narrative about and trying to be perfect at, it basically translates into I don't feel enough somehow. I don't feel like I'm productive enough, thin enough, beautiful enough. All the enoughs. It's not the pathway to being enough. Like, enough is available right now.
But I think if we select the subset of people from who go into medicine, we do have a tendency to do things to extremes. The thing that actually helped me get over my disordered eating was actually...
Hello, my beautiful friends. My name is Dr. Beck.
And I am Christine Barker, and this is Am I Doing It Wrong? A podcast for doctors by doctors. Every week on the pod, we'll be bringing you conversations which shine light in dark places, normalise the doctor journey, ease unnecessary suffering, and give you actionable steps to thrive in all facets of your life. So grab a cuppa and get cozy for this week's episode of Am I Doing It Wrong?
Hello, my beautiful friends, our Dr. Humans, and welcome back to the potty. Today we have a life-changing episode for you as we talk to you about the energy with which you do things. This really is life-changing because the energy with which you choose any action or any decision for that matter in your life really does determine not only your quality of life, but also the quality of your results. If we all probably have that experience of doing things from a place of, I don't really want to do this, I feel obliged, I just have to, and kind of like dragging our feet through the sand on the decision that we've made. And not only do our results end up being not as good from that weighed down place and that contracted low energy, but we end up feeling heavier. Because of it, we end up feeling more exhausted because they were the moments that we spent in our life feeling weighed down moment to moment to moment. So today, Christian's going to bring this concept of being conscious of the energy with which you do anything you're doing in life, big things or small things, so that you can not only feel better on a day-to-day basis, have more energy, be less tired, but also make sure that the energy that you do pour into things that you do really pays you back. So Christine, kick us off with some examples so we can drop ourselves into where this shows up in our life and why it can be so important to us.
Oh my goodness. And I'm so passionate about this. This is just something that has radically changed my experience of just the day to day. And so, yeah, I hope that everyone listening gets the same benefit once you really do sort of recognize this within yourself. So now, although I'm talking about this, I'm certainly not perfect at this in any which way, but I just feel that there are literally two ways to come at anything you're doing in life, and they are polar opposites. So for example, if you are going to the gym, right? If you're going to go to the gym, go to exercise class, everyone knows why you need to exercise, but I know that along the way, I have two different narratives for that. I can either go from a place of self-loathing, wanting to be different, thinking I'm too XYZ, too fat, not thin enough, all the things, right? All that kind of stuff can come up in my head. Or I can go from like I just really love myself and I want to be healthy and I value myself and I want to have energy and I want to feel good. You know, there's like two different ways. So you're going to go to the gym irrespective, but then like having those thoughts in your head, conscious or subconscious, they're going to affect how you feel about yourself, how you feel about being there, and just your general life experience. I think other things that come up is dressing a certain way. Are you buying the designer clothes because someone on Instagram was buying the designer clothes and you want to be like them? Or are you buying it because it's your authentic expression and when you put that on, you just feel amazing? just so many other things. When you're scrolling on Instagram, are you doing that because you're trying to numb out? Or are you doing it because you want to go on and support all your pals and comment and interact and actually be social, and or get some inspirational quotes that make your life better? It just goes on in every domain of our life. And I think the one that actually comes up for me that's hitting the hardest just now, or why it's so relevant just now, is, I'm 40, I just turned 40, and I'm aware that I'm a 40-year-old woman. In my younger years, I used to have anorexia, the kind of restrictive type, when I was a teenager. And some of that came from, just being a high achiever and wanting control. And anyone who's had an eating disorder will know that it's not all about the food necessarily, but there was also the social pressure about how you have to look and the value of who you are based on your appearance and how thin you are. And all of the messaging at that time in my life was just that thin was the only way to be, or the best way to be. And so I did have anorexia as a teenager, and the kind of mindset followed me into my 20s. And I would say that I've healed now. I still, look after myself, but I'd say that I'm most of the way there with that healing. But then I've got this new thing to deal with, which is aging. And I'm sort of like, oh. And so now I've kind of made this conscious decision that I'm going to age with nice, kind mindset. I don't want to be in the nursing home having a negative self-talk. So it's getting old. So I want to just love myself. And as I age, I want to be showing up in a way inside my head, loving myself. And I think the reason for doing that is just understanding that it feels better to not have the negative self-talk. And so I really wanted to talk about this today, really just get into the nitty-gritty, and I'm so keen to hear your experience and where this shows up maybe in your life as well, Beck, but just to really talk about it and normalize it, but also understand that there is actually a choice, that you can actually change how you think about your life and how you think about yourself, and just feel better moment to moment. And who doesn't want to feel better? So yeah.
Firstly, I'm thinking about, the days that I go to the gym and I'm grumpy or I'm sad, I don't want to be there, there's some kind of negativity or resistance in my mind. I actually notice that I feel weaker. I physically feel weaker because I go and do a weights class. And so it's all the variables are all nicely fixed. I pick up my same weight, or I have my sort of aspirational, best me weight that I can do. And maybe I'm having a streak of feeling really good. But if I'm not in a good mindset, it's physically harder for me to move that same weight. I think there's a study, they've shown that negativity actually made people physically weaker. Maybe it was lying that made people weaker. I'll try and look that up and find it for you guys to put below, because it's a good motivator to recognize how your energy does affect you. And whether it's negativity or lying, it's still the energy with which you do things physically affects your body. Right? It can physically affect you. And when the whole point of going to the gym was to lift as big a weights as possible, to give my body the best stimulus to grow, then being able to change my energy, as you're saying, or even be aware of my energy to be able to change it, does make a really big difference. The other thing that I think about is, I think disordered eating was probably quite common for women in our generation, just because, you only need to look so far as the general marketing messages that women receive. I remember being a young girl and looking, being in the supermarket checkout with my mom and seeing all these magazines, and they were just glorified images on every magazine of this thin woman and that thin woman, and you turn on the TV ad and it's here's how you lose weight, and there's the ab cruncher thing between my weekend TV shows. It's no mystery that, a lot of us were sort of fixated on being thin. Just to say, me too, maybe you as well. And I think if we select the subset of people from who go into medicine, we do have a tendency to do things to extremes. The funny thing that comes to mind for me is the way that I ultimately got over my disordered eating, which thank goodness I did, because it would have made being pregnant and postpartum just an impossible mind battle for me. The thing that actually helped me get over my disordered eating was actually starting to be kind to myself, as you say, to make decisions about what I ate or didn't eat from a place of loving myself instead of a place of trying to change myself. And that might sound really too good to be true. It's because the energy from which I was restricting my food was from a place of not loving myself. In fact, from hating myself, from hating the way that I looked, from wanting to change the way I looked to be good enough. And when I took those actions from that emotion, that energy, there was this build up over time of me constantly feeling worse and worse and worse and worse and more restricted and less free. That restriction, that feeling of not having freedom or control, that feeling of not liking myself made me want to eat to feel better. So it was just perpetuating the cycle. So when I started to eat, right, the same action, do the same thing. When I started to eat food and make decisions to eat food from a place of loving myself, I was doing the same things, eating food. But it didn't have that energy cost. It didn't have that emotional, energetic, weighing down and even building up of pressure and pain that then gave me a reason to eat from a place of feeling bad. Then I was just eating from a place of feeling good and loving myself. So the energy and emotion from which you take action, it's not just the action that is the result that you get, but the energy and emotional cost is another result that you're getting here, another output that you're getting.
Yeah, I love that. And so you're sort of saying like how you make the decision, you get that different result. But I also think that there is something about the internal experience where it's just exhausting as well. If you're having this kind of, and I feel like I would do this with multiple different facets of my life, especially like in previous versions of myself before I was really trying to work on it consciously. And it would just be like in every facet, I'd be critical, like, you know what I mean, on some level. And so there were facets that were more obvious to me that I was doing this, but ultimately, you know, perfectionistic behavior, really just not giving yourself a break, just the whole high achiever thing, right? Just on every facet, you just want to be somehow perfect, even though that doesn't exist. And it's just exhausting, and you might just not feel very well. Like you might not feel great and you actually don't know why, and it's just this kind of dulled existence. You're coming at life from this kind of exhausted place and you're exhausting yourself almost. Like I think there's that element too.
Absolutely. And we talk about it as this need to be perfect. Wanting to be perfect, it sounds like it could be coming from positive energy, doesn't it? Like I just want to be better. But the reason that wanting to be perfect is so exhausting is because what's actually behind that is being terrified to not be perfect. It being unacceptable to not be perfect. And that's why it's such an energy drain for us, this perfectionism. It sounds pretty, it sounds positive, but it's actually this big, massive threat.
Is unattainable. I think the sort of themes of this, and we're talking about energy today and the sort of the vibe and almost like the thought process, whether it's positive or negative thought process, we're kind of talking about that all in the one brush as if that's all the same thing. But I think even more simple than that is it coming from not enough or enough, because I think that ultimately everything that I have a negative self-narrative about and trying to be perfect at, it basically translates into I don't feel enough somehow. I don't feel like I'm productive enough, thin enough, beautiful enough, young enough, all the enoughs.
I'm doing this to be enough.
It's not the pathway to being enough. Like enough is available right now. If you're coming at it from that, like it's an unattainable goal, just like perfection. And so it's just a really interesting thing. Like why do we create those unattainable goals for ourselves? But I don't think it's conscious. Like I don't think we're talking about it as openly as we're talking about it here. And so it's just, you don't kind of know you're doing it when you're doing it.
100%. I think the unfortunate thing about being a kid, being young, is that we get socialized without knowing it. And socialization is this big, fancy, somewhat dramatic word, but it's just society teaching you how to behave in an acceptable way. And what happens is we're constantly scanning our environment. Like we're not dumb even when we're children. We're picking up on all these messages of like your big sister making a comment about how this overweight person, like they're so lazy, or the TV ad that says blah, 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 or your friend making a comment about how this doctor, like they didn't know the diagnosis. So like they clearly didn't even know what they were talking about. Any of these little things. I think what happens is we receive these kind of scripts, these prescriptions of what is good enough from all the external noise, and we sort of receive them by osmosis and accept them, and we need to can't accept them first. We need to see them first and be like, oh, actually, do I agree with that or not? Is that a part of my definition of a good person, a good doctor, a good woman, a lovable woman, or do I have a different definition? I really like this focus on first, before deciding what you're going to do, how you're going to show up, what a good person would or wouldn't do, to just take a step back, get into an aligned, authentic, loving, generous energy, and then just let the behaviors flow from that. You don't even need to calculate, decide, work out what is the best behavior. How should I show up in this situation? You can just get yourself into that emotional, energetic space. Then you can trust yourself to just act from there, because that energy informs how you behave. It's, the word emotion, in its Latin origin, it literally means to be moved, something along those lines. The whole point of how we feel as people is to drive behavior.
I love that. And I think that is ultimately the truth, isn't it? Like, it's just, sorry, I'm having a lot of trouble with because Bella's crying, I can't think. For all the parents in planet Earth, Beck can do this, like, she's got a superpower. She just talks when obviously someone's looking after a child right now, but like Beck can just talk as if nothing is happening. My brain shuts down with hearing a child cry. I don't know. It's like a wiring of some sort, but I love the energy. I really do think the energy is important, and I hope you do too. And I hope this has been helpful. The end. Lots of love.
Oh my goodness, my fellow mothers. I mean, this is a great example of an emotional regulation skill that we need to develop, isn't it? Because the things I do for my incredible, amazing baby, they blow my mind. Like, I am so in love with her and obsessed with her. And to learn to function, to learn to continue to be myself in the world while having a young baby has been an emotional, energetic challenge. Just speaking more generally, to be able to hold a space where the world is not behaving in the way that you want it to behave, where not everybody's happy, where, your partner's upset, where your other kids, something's gone wrong with them that day at school, or, one of your colleagues has, said something shocking or frightening, whatever thing that might happen in the outside world that upsets you. Your ability to stay in your own energy, regardless of what's happening outside in the outside world, is your absolute superpower, to Christine's point. To not be weighed down by thinking about how things should be or how you'd like for them to be different, and instead to be able to be the person who is behaving in the way, who is a representation of how you'd like for the world to be, to then be able to show up in a way that moves you closer towards that. That is your superpower. So that's one of the reasons why your energy, your emotional state, why these aren't just little soft skills, why these are actually completely life-changing, trajectory-changing skills for doctors. So if you found this episode, you hear the word energy and you're like, oh, that's a bit woo. That's pretty woo-woo. Maybe this one's not for me. Remember, how you feel determines how you behave.
It was such a beautiful way to finish. And yeah, I just love that. All the motherhood things. I think that superpower is something that you have officially mastered, and I am going to attempt to.
You haven't quite had as many. I've had some practice reps that you have not gotten in. And look,
yeah.
My nervous system was pretty crazy at the start. There was lots of like, she cry, I cry, she cry, I cry. Needed to harness that.
Honestly, like, I think that just speaks to the point that you can actually, like, you can change anything about this, and you can, like, if you can do that, like, I just think that is a superpower, and it's something I'm aspiring to, is like allowing this not to be just completely unaffected by anything and everything, and just be in that energy. It's such a beautiful example. So yay to the mums out there.
Yay to the mums. Superheroes. Love you all. Wow.
Love you all. We hope this has been a helpful episode. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you again in our next one. Bye.
We get so many heartfelt thank yous from our fellow doctors for having these vulnerable conversations on this public podcast. If you want to say thank you too, we would be most appreciative if you left our podcast a review. Reviews actually mean everything to us because they're what make the platform share this podcast with all the other Dr. Humans. And our mission is to make as many Dr. Humans as we can reach feel more human. Just go to the podcast app, click on the show, and find the option to review. The other way you can help us is just by sharing the podcast with someone in your life who you know will say, thank you for saying that, or tagging us on social media. And if you're in healthcare looking for speakers for your next event, or professionals who actually get it to facilitate the vulnerable conversations our teams of doctors need, request us through podcastfordoctors@gmail.com.